Eleanor, my wife, glided back into the bedroom wearing lingerie that could stop a man's heart. I was in the middle of a team fight in League of Legends, absolutely dominating, but the sight of her made my screen blur. I swear, no matter how many times I saw her, that body, that face, and especially those legs that went on for days, it was like the first time every time. I tossed my phone onto the nightstand. Sorry, team, I thought, a silent apology for the loss. I was about to hand them. Duty calls. I launched myself at her, a predator pouncing, and pressed her down into the mattress. We were a tangle of limbs and hungry mouths. The prelude heating up fast, right on the verge of the main event. And then, of course, that damn phone started ringing. It buzzed and chimed relentlessly on the nightstand under my furious glare. She still reached for it. What? How could you be so careless? Her voice was laced with alarm. Don't move. Don't you dare move. I'm on my way. She pushed me off, scrambling to pull on her clothes. William sprained his ankle, she said, her voice tight with panic. It's bad. I have to go check on him. Watching her frantic movements, I was still breathing heavily, a mix of frustration and lingering arousal. I grabbed her hand. He sprained his ankle. So he calls you instead of 911? Eleanor wrenched her hand free. Julian. Please, William. Us all alone in his apartment. He's just a kid. He doesn't know how to take care of himself. I'll just go see. And I'll be right back. She was already halfway out the door as she said it, her words trailing behind her as she disappeared down the hall. A bitter laugh escaped me. The heat in my veins turned to ice. My breathing evened out, becoming slow and controlled. She called a 25-year-old man a kid. His own parents felt fine letting him live alone in New York City. But my wife was worried he couldn't handle a sprained ankle if it's that serious. He murmured to the empty room, maybe they should just amputate. Here's the thing. I'm not from this world. I was transmigrated into the plot of a novel. The original hero and heroine, Julian and Eleanor, were in a marriage that was more a merger of dynasties than a romance. But the original Julian truly loved Eleanor. They had 5 good years together, blissfully in love, until the arrival of a young assistant named William Hayes. Eleanor's attention was completely captivated by him, and she started abandoning her husband again and again for this newcomer. The original Julian was a pathetic fool. A man from a powerful family repeatedly humiliated by this kid, who would show up at his own home, and he did nothing. In the end, he literally died from the sheer anger and frustration of it all. When I arrived in this story, William hadn't shown up yet. According to the timeline, this was supposed to be our honeymoon phase, and I made it that way with my superior performance in the bedroom. I made Eleanor fall for me hard. I thought I had rewritten the script, that there would be no room for some other man. But then William appeared ahead of schedule. And, just like in the book, he immediately caught her. I had started a few weeks ago. She told me about a new assistant at her company. Someone who was clumsy and couldn't get anything right. He was so helpless. It's almost cute, she'd said. I was having dinner. My hand stopped mid-air crack. The stem of my wineglass snapped between my fingers. Eleanor didn't even notice. She was still smiling, recounting some amusing story about William's incompetence that day, even letting out a ginger at her half. That's when I understood. The story's core programming was immutable no matter what I did. She would be drawn to William. The original Julian had done everything right. He was written as the perfect doting husband. And what did it get him? My initial plan was to win her over completely, to secure her heart before William could sink his claws in. But the first time he dared to show up at my door, to challenge me in my own home, I realized how far their innocent relationship had already gone. Of course, I taught him a little lesson that day. I thought he'd back off. Then I could get back to my life as the wealthier, living in luxury with my beautiful wife. But my thinking was, if you can't keep her, then don't. Yet, just letting them live happily ever After that wasn't my style either. William Hayes, I whispered to the shadows, I will grind you into dust and scatter your ashes in a foreign land. I remember the first time I met him. It was an evening I'd just gotten home from work. Maria, our housekeeper, had prepared a fantastic dinner, and I was pleased Eleanor should be home soon. I muttered to myself, popping a perfectly glazed drib into my mouth. Delicious. Just then, the front door opened, and Eleanor walked in. You way late today, Maria. Made all your favorites hurry up, and my words died in my throat. A man followed her inside. I didn't know his name was William then, only that some new assistant existed. I'd never seen his face. And this is... I asked. You must be Julian, sir. And William Hayes, one of Eleanor's employees. He introduced himself before Eleanor even had a chance to speak. My car broke down today, and Eleanor was kind enough to give me a ride when I mentioned I was just going home to an empty apartment. She insisted I join you both for dinner. I hope I'm not intruding. He was already slipping off his shoes, acting completely at home. A disarmingly innocent smile plastered on his face, the kind of smile that puts people at ease if I didn't know what kind of snake he was. I might have been charmed myself. Of course you're intruding, I said, my face a flat mask. I wasn't joking, and we didn't set a place for you. Hearing this, William, who had just finished changing into guest slippers, froze mid-stride. Though he looked awkwardly at Eleanor. Eleanor rushed to my side and slapped my arm playfully. Oh, you, Ray, always teasing, and she turned to him. Don't mind him. I'm not very hungry tonight. You can have my share. She warmly ushered him to the dining table. After sitting down, William put on an apologetic smile. Julian, your home has such a great atmosphere. I go home to an empty apartment every day. It's so lonely. And not asking for much, but if I could just have this once or twice a week, I'd be so grateful. As stuff for a kid out here on his own. He trailed off with a heavy sigh, his face a portrait of sadness. Then you should come over on weekends. We can all hang out together, Eleanor said, her heart clearly melting at his performance. She'd grown up coddled and privileged, completely oblivious to the fact that this was normal life. An adult moving out and fending for themselves wasn't a tragedy, really. Eleanor? You mean it? William's eyes lit up, and he shot up from his chair. Pausing for a moment, he was probably restraining himself from giving her a hug because I was there. He then turned to me. Julian, is that really okay? I nodded slowly. Sure, I thought. Let's see how many beatings you can take. Throughout dinner, William was ecstatic, chattering non-stop with Eleanor. Then, she, in turn, seemed to have endless things to say to him. It was as if I wasn't even there. You two eat up. I'm gonna check if the water's boiled for tea, I said, wiping my mouth with a napkin. I walked into the kitchen. I knew the script. The moment I was in the kitchen, William would follow. Using the excuse of helping out according to the plot, he was supposed to pour himself a glass of hot water, accidentally spill some on himself after adding a bit of cold water to lessen the burn, then trigger a scene so perfectly staged that God himself couldn't talk his way out of getting slapped. Eleanor would slap the original Julian, then rush William to the hospital, where she doted on him for 2 days over a patch of slightly red skin. Sure enough, just as the script dictated, I had barely stepped into the kitchen before William followed Julian. Let me help you. His voice was loud, clearly meant for Eleanor to hear in the dining room. She smiled faintly. What a thoughtful young man that William is. Help me with what? Help me kick your ass. Get the hell out of here before you get hurt, I said, pouring myself a cup of tea. My voice was low, just loud enough for him to hear perfectly. What did you say? He asked, a look of disbelief on his face as if he couldn't have heard me right. I said get the hell out if you don't want to die. Leslie lifted my eyes, looking at him as if he were an anti-FK. Seeing my expression, he dropped the AC to grab the glass, filled it 2/3 with hot water, and then turned on the faucet. About to add the cold water. Looks like I really underestimated you. Eleanor told me you were a gentle soul. I was planning to put you in your place today. But this won't stop me, Ark. Before he could finish a sentence, I kicked him squarely in the stomach, sending him sprawling to the floor. Then I picked up the electric kettle, which had just finished boiling, and I poured its entire contents over his head. Help me. He's trying to kill me. William shrieked, writhing on the floor. His scream was like a pig being slaughtered. Sensing something was terribly wrong, Eleanor rushed into the kitchen. She froze for a second at the scene and screamed at me, Julian, what are you doing? Stop it. She didn't dare come closer. I was still holding the kettle, calmly following William's rolling form, pouring the scalding water over his body. After his face, I moved to his torso. When his torso was done, I moved to his lower body. Before I was transmigrated, I'd seen a pig butchered. I knew exactly how to pour the water to make the hair come off easily, to inflict maximum agonizing pain without actually killing him. 3 gallons of boiling water. A brand new extra-large kettle I bought specifically for this occasion as the last drop trickled out. I shook the kettle dry and turned to Eleanor with a deadly serious expression. What are you staring at? Call an ambulance, get into the hospital. The consequences could be dire if you wait. You get him in the car. I'll grab some things and meet you there. Eleanor looked like her brain had short-circuited. She nodded numbly. Right. Okay. Yes. I'll take him to the hospital. She tried to help William up, but the second her hand touched his skin, he screamed as if stabbed with a needle. Watching them stumble out to the car, I allowed myself a small smile. The show is just getting started. Don't you worry. I won't let you die that easily. So much for the slap I was supposed to get in the book. A small red mark from a splash of hot water, that William. 2 days of Eleanor's undivided attention in the hospital. Now, with his skin practically boiled off, I figured that would buy me at least a month of peace. I slept like a baby. The next morning I stretched luxuriously, then checked my phone. Dozens of missed calls. Countless messages. I didn't even bother reading them. I got up, had breakfast, and was just about to head out when 2 police officers blocked my doorway. Ray from the local precinct, sir. We received a report of an intentional assault. That's a terrible misunderstanding. Officers, it was an accident. My hand slipped. He's a friend of mine. Why would I have proceeded to recount the previous night's events, sticking to my version of the truth? Ray saying your hand slipped, and you spilled 3 gallons of boiling water. One of the officers asked, his eyebrow arched. That S1 slippery hand you've got there. Well, the kettle was so heavy, I couldn't control it properly, and so I explained with a look of earnest sincerity. Yeah, save it. The officer cut me off. We saw the victim before we came here. He has burns over 100 of his body. You couldn't water a garden that evenly, and you're telling me you couldn't control it properly? The injuries are severe but not fatal. You've got quite a technique, huh? You flatter me. I just did it casually. I really didn't mean to. All right, that's enough. I wasn't complimenting you. So, you can drop the false modesty. Why don't you come with us downtown? They put me in the back of a squad car. On the way to the station, I sent Eleanor a text. The gist of it was, if I face charges, the story of Eleanor Vance, CEO, brings home her young male assistant at night, who then gets horrifically burned by her husband, is going to make for some ugly headlines. Think of the company's stock price. Think of the board, and a criminal record for me would look terrible when we eventually have kids. Sure enough, not 10 minutes after I arrived at the station, Eleanor showed up with a signed letter of understanding from William. With that letter, my cooperative attitude, and my promise to cover all medical expenses, I was out in time for lunch. I was devouring a steak in a nearby restaurant when Eleanor, who had been simmering all morning, finally exploded. Why would you do that to William? He provoked me. He was going to pour hot water on himself to frame me, to drive a wedge between us so he could take my place. Eleanor stared at me, her face a mask of disbelief. Do you really expect me to believe something so absurd? If you don't believe me, you shouldn't have asked. I'm just telling you the facts. I'm not interested in a woman who's already chosen sides. I put down my knife and fork and pulled the file from my briefcase. The divorce papers I'd drawn up. Eleanor, let's get a divorce. I pushed the agreement across the table. But he didn't take it, he just stared at me, her eyes wide with shock. Julian, what is the meaning of this? It means that after we divorce, you and your little assistant can be together openly and lovingly. And setting you free. The real reason I disfigured him with boiling water was so that even if we divorced, they could never be happy. Eleanor might feel guilty. She might even take care of him. But no one could feel desire looking at a body covered with grotesque scars. I'm not the generous type. Julian, what are you talking about? He's just a kid. I felt sorry for him, all alone in the city. And he's so clumsy. So I helped him out a bit more. There's nothing between us. Her voice rose as if the volume alone made her words true. Muaf. I snorted. Do you believe that yourself? You say he's a kid, but he's only 2 years younger than us. When I was his age, I was flying all over the country, all over the world, closing deals for the family business. You seemed perfectly fine with that then, didn't you? You say he's clumsy, that he can't do anything without your help. But what do you do with other underperforming employees? You fire them without a second thought. You are a sharp, brilliant businesswoman. Eleanor, are you telling me you can't see what he's trying to do? My words hit their mark. The self-righteous anger drained out of her. She couldn't meet my gaze, her eyes darting around the room as she fidgeted nervously. In all the years of our marriage, I had never seen her like this. After a long moment, she finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. Julian, it's not what you think. I might have helped him a little too much, but I swear nothing happened between us. I had finished my meal. I stood up. Well, you should think it over with that. I left the restaurant. Eleanor watched my retreating back, tears streaming down her face. She felt it. I was different now when they first met. She thought Julian was perfect in every way except perhaps a bit too serious, lacking a sense of fun. But he had always been devoted to her then. A few years ago, it was like a switch had been flipped. I became witty, charming, and intensely passionate, especially in bed. She found herself falling deeper and deeper in love, completely addicted. But when William appeared, he still managed to capture her attention instantly. This situation was pathetic, and she just couldn't bring herself to say no to him. That's why, in the face of my accusations, she had no defense. Why is this happening? She sobbed, tearing the divorce papers into tiny pieces. A terrifying feeling washed over her, the sense that something precious was slipping from her control. No, I'll send William away immediately. I can't do this to my husband. She rushed to the hospital just as she arrived. William was being wheeled out of the intensive care units. Seeing him wrapped head to toe in bandages like a mummy, the words she had prepared died in her throat. William saw her to his eyes, immediately reddened, and tears began to flow. Eleanor, I'm in so much pain. Your husband did this to me. But you won't abandon me, will you? Don't worry, William. Eleanor took over, pushing the gurney from a nurse. I'll be here with you. She stayed for 5 weeks. William had severe burns, but thanks to the top-tier care, he avoided infection and was ready for discharge. Eleanor had insisted on the best possible treatments and scar mediation therapies, but the scars on his face and body were still shocking to look at. It was the height of summer, yet he wore long sleeves, gloves, a hat, sunglasses, and a mask as they stepped out of the hospital. Before they could even get to the car, the group of teenagers, mistaking him for a celebrity, swarmed in, asking for autographs. When they got closer and saw the disfigured skin on his face, they recoiled in horror and scattered tears streamed down William's face. He couldn't stand it. Looking like this, not quite human, not quite a ghost. He had wanted to see me rot in jail. But that day, Eleanor, ignoring his urgent need for medical attention, had insisted he sign the letter of understanding. She had promised to do everything in her power to restore his appearance and give him more compensation than he could spend in a lifetime. Faced with her relentless determination, he had reluctantly agreed otherwise. Given the legal power of our two families, it wouldn't have been impossible for my lawyers to argue in court that he was a trespass. The car pulled up to our house when we walked in and they saw me sitting there. Both of their expressions became unnatural, Julian. Don't get the wrong idea, he just got out of the hospital and can't move around very well. I brought him here for a few days so I can look after him. We have plenty of staff after all, Eleanor said, walking towards me with a placating smile, her tone betraying her guilt for having been gone for nearly a month. I sidestepped her attempt to take my arm, my gaze fixed on William. So, you're planning on staying here? My tone was anything but friendly. He grew nervous. I just got out of the hospital. That's still a bit inconvenient for me. I didn't say another word. I just turned and walked toward the kitchen. Julian. Where are you going? Eleanor cried out, just checking if the water's boiling, you know what. William stammered. I just remembered I left the faucet on in my place. I should go. Before he finished his sentence, he was already out the door. I came out of the kitchen. Who was it that said he couldn't move around conveniently? He seemed to run pretty damn fast to me. Eleanor started to go after him, then glanced back at me and stopped. Julian, how many times do I have to tell you there's nothing between us? Why can't you just understand me? She looked utterly exhausted, but I felt no sympathy. She had brought this on herself. My wife, who abandons our home to take care of another man, wants me to understand her. Sorry, can't understand that, not one bit. I turned and went into the guest room. Eleanor collapsed onto the sofa, her head in her hands. She truly couldn't understand why things had turned out this way when she hadn't done anything. Julian had changed. He was more alive, more charismatic than before, but also more domineering, and God help her, she preferred this version of him. It proved the old adage, the nice guy finishes last, often labeled as boring and uninspired. After that day, Eleanor started coming home earlier. She even began taking cooking lessons from Maria at night. She paraded around in an array of sexy lingerie, blatantly trying to seduce me. And I, being weak, always fell for it. Of all the 36 stratagems, the honey trap was my kryptonite. On the third night, I finally surrendered. No wonder. They say even heroes can't resist a beautiful woman. And I was no damn hero. After making a few flimsy excuses to myself, I was conquered once again. For the next few days, it was like old times. She came home early, cooked for me herself, not as good as Maria, but still impressive. After dinner, she'd pull me into the shower, and we'd get busy making up for lost time. She even said she wanted to have a baby with me. Life was good. The good times didn't last. After about 2 weeks, she started working late again. She'd come home having already eaten, looking exhausted sometimes. Even if she came home early, a single phone call would send her rushing out the door, claiming there was an emergency at the office. With my omniscient narrator's perspective, they knew exactly where she was going. I pulled out my phone and opened Instagram. Sure enough, there's a new post on William's feed. Series of photos of Eleanor wearing an apron, cooking in his kitchen. The caption read, "Told my favorite person I was too tired to cook and was just going to order takeout. She wouldn't have it and came right over to cook for me. I'm the luckiest guy in the world." I stared at the phone, lost in thought. When did I add William on Instagram? I couldn't remember. Was it another unavoidable plot point? This time, seeing the post, I felt nothing. Not a ripple of anger. There was no way he was going to make me die of a rage-induced stroke this time around. When Eleanor got home, I asked casually, "Where were you?" "The office." "You smell like garlic." "Shrimp scampi." I cut her lie off before I could fully form. A flicker of panic crossed her face. "Oh, a colleague at the office ordered someone shared your nose is amazing, honey." I just smiled and told her to go shower. I had zero trust left for her. The next few days were the same. Even when she was home, a single phone call would whisk her away. With my privileged knowledge, I knew her excuses were transparent lies. For a brief period, she tried to be good again, coming home early, parading in those see-through nightgowns, her eyes full of a deliberate, pleading submission. Fine, the asset division wasn't finalized yet. I'd play along. It wasn't like I could complain about the accommodations. Her looks and body went up tier. After all, she wanted to serve. I was happy to be waited though we were to actors in a play, each getting what we wanted while the surface remained placid. Tonight, the mood was just right. He had just stepped out of the shower, her hair damp. Her cheeks flushed. The silk nightgown she wore clung to every curve. I had to put my phone down and pulled her onto the bed when her phone started vibrating violently on the nightstand. The screen lit up the dark room. I glanced over. The name glowing on the screen was William. Eleanor froze beneath me the next second, almost by instinct. Her hand shot out for the phone. I watched as she, breath still husky from our foreplay, answered the call. Her eyes already glued to the caller ID. Hello, William, what's wrong? Her voice was husky with arousal but threaded with anxiety. Whatever he said on the other end made her face drain of color. What? You sprained your ankle? Was it serious? Don't move. Don't you dare move. I'm coming right now. AFK? I cursed under my breath. The fire she'd just lit was extinguished by a bucket of ice water. Eleanor had already shoved me aside and scrambled out of bed. She grabbed her clothes from the floor, pulling them on haphazardly while babbling excuses. Julian, I'm so sorry. William sprained his ankle. It's really bad. He can't move. He's all alone. I have to go check on him. I'll be right back. The sheer panic in her voice was absurd. Do you think her 3-year-old son had fallen down a well? Not that a 25-year-old man had twisted his ankle. I sat up, breathing hard, the last vestiges of desire replaced by a cold, sharp rage. I shot out my hand and clapped down on her. Delicate tryst. He sprained his ankle. He can't call 911. He has to call you? Who the hell are you to him? Eleanor winced, twisting her arm violently to break my grip. She didn't even look back at me as she bolted for the door, tossing a final, dismissive line over her shoulder like she was talking to a difficult child. Julian, he reasonable. He's just a kid. All alone out here. He doesn't know how to take care of himself. I'm just gonna make sure he's okay. And I'll be right back. I promise. Slam. The door banged shut. Her hurried footsteps faded down the hallway. The room fell silent save for my own heavy breathing and the faint, cloying scent of her perfume. I stared at the closed door, my gaze hardening, my chest still heaving not from passion but from a rage that was settling into something much colder. A kid? The 25-year-old infant? His parents had no problem letting him fend for himself in this city, but my wife was terrified he couldn't handle a sprain. Fine, if the sprain was that serious. I pulled my lips into a smile devoid of any warmth. And the leg has to go. I whispered to the empty room. Amputated. And next day, I drove directly to Mount Sinai. The Vance family was a major benefactor of the hospital. My name carried weight, here as expected. Eleanor had installed William in a top-floor VIP suite for a simple sprain. He had a leading specialist and a team of nurses fussing over him. I took it all in, then went straight to the hospital director's office. Director Evans was a man who knew which side his bread was buttered on. He shot to his feet the moment I walked in. Mr. Vance, what a surprise! What brings you here today? I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I sat down opposite his leather throne and tapped a finger on his polished desk drive. Evans. The patient in the VIP suite, William Hayes, right ankle sprain. Yes, Mr. Vance. You can rest assured Miss Miller gave us specific instructions. We've assigned our best orthopedic specialist. We're sparing no expense, using the most advanced treatment protocols. I held up a hand to cut him off, so that's how she put it. I thought you'd think he had terminal cancer. Not a twisted ankle. My voice was calm, almost gentle. The medicine is top-notch, I'm sure. But I find your treatment plan conservative. Jive. Evans blinked. Conservative, Mr. Vance? What are you suggesting? His injury, I said slowly, my tone that of a seasoned expert. I've seen the scans. It's far more complex than it appears. Severe soft tissue damage, vascular and nerve compression. Distal nerves are already showing signs of necrosis. If we wait, it will only get worse. Best case scenario, he walks with a permanent limp. Worst case, a vascular necrosis of the femoral head eventually. A vegetative state. My description made sweat bead on the director's forehead. Is it really that serious? Victiva solemn nod. Then what's the next step? He asked, his voice strained. For his long-term health, I said, pausing as if in deep thought. Amputation is the only responsible choice. From a hip amputation. Drive. Evans' face went white. Mr. Vance, I've seen the report myself. It's a standard spraying. Not even a hairline fracture amputation is. It's completely unnecessary. The risks are immense. Risk. I lifted my gaze and met his flat, cold look that made the rest of his protest die in his throat. Dr. Ed Evans, you're the professional here. One misstep, the infection spreads, or he's left with a permanent, debilitating disability. That's the real risk, isn't it? The Vance family invests in this hospital to save lives, not to take half measures that could lead to bigger problems down the road. This is a liability. That's settled. You, LL, write up the report. He's here alone, no family to complicate things, just get it done. I stood up and walked out of his office. Dr. Evans watched me go, his expression hardening with resolve. He understood this wasn't a discussion. It was an order. Ooh, he knew the power the Vance family wielded. He couldn't avoid the consequences of refusal. A few hours later, in William's luxury suite, a group of doctors in white coats, their faces grim and serious, filed into the room led by the specialist Dive Evans had personally assigned. William, who was lounging in bed scrolling through his phone, was startled by the sudden procession. Mr. Hayes, the specialist began, his tone heavy with professional gravity. After an emergency consultation and the latest high-resolution imaging this morning, we discovered that the injury to your right ankle is far more complex and dangerous than it initially appeared. William was baffled. He knew exactly how his ankle felt. It was a performance. It wasn't even that sore anymore. What do you mean? It was just a sprain. No, the specialist said, his voice firm. We found signs of severe vascular blockage and irreversible nerve compression. Blood flow to the foot is already compromised. Worse, we have strong reason to suspect the early onset of a hidden bone infection. Osteoporosis. If that infection spreads, the consequences could be catastrophic. At best, you lose the entire lower limb. At worst, it becomes life-threatening. William's face turned sheet white. Now, that's impossible. It feels fine. It's not even swollen. I can't even feel any pain anymore. Are you sure you haven't made a miss? You can't feel any pain? The specialist interrupted, his expression alarmed. That indicates it's progressing rapidly. Nurse, prep the patient for immediate surgery. You need to sign here. A nurse said, handing him a clipboard with a pen. For a face equally serious, terrified, and confused, William numbly signed the consent form. He was immediately wheeled into the operating room. When William regained consciousness, it was to a searing, bone-deep agony that ripped him from the fog of anesthesia. He blinked his eyes open, and for a few seconds he was disoriented. Then, instinctively, he reached down to touch his right leg. His hand met empty or nothing. A sickening dread washed over him. Trembling, he summoned all his strength and threw back the thin blanket covering his body from the hip down. His entire right leg was gone. My leg. Where's my leg? My leg. Give me back my leg. The room echoed with his desperate, animalistic howl. She screamed and cried until his body gave out and he passed out from sheer exhaustion. That evening, Eleanor dragged her exhausted body home. She spent the previous night at the hospital and the entire day in back-to-back meetings. Seeing me at home, seemingly calm and having already eaten, she breathed a small sigh of relief. She pulled out her phone to call William and check on his recovery. She Dee tried calling him a few times that afternoon, but he hadn't picked up. This time, he answered as she listened. Her face grew paler and paler. Her expression shifting from confusion to horror. After hanging up, she turned to me. I was sitting leisurely on the living room sofa. Sipping tea, she finally snapped, "Julian, was it you?" She shrieked, rushing towards me, her eyes bloodshot, her voice cracking. William's leg, how could it be gone? The doctor said it was a sudden, severe infection that required an emergency amputation, but yesterday, it was just a sprain. It was nothing. It was you. You did this. You monster. I set down my teacup and looked up at her. To my face a placid lake, watching her hysterical breakdown without a flicker of emotion. "So you admit it was just a sprain? That it was nothing?" I said calmly. I slowly pulled out my phone, unlocked it, and tapped on the familiar green icon of WhatsApp. A few swipes and I turned the screen towards her. Shoving it right in her face on the screen was a screenshot of a status William had posted the night before. "Sprained my ankle. The pain is killing me." Loudly crying face emoji, but my angel of a boss came to take care of me right away with her here. I'm not afraid of anything. Red heart emoji below the text was a photo. Eleanor, seen from the side, sitting by his bed. Her head bowed in concentration as she dabbed at his ankle with a cotton ball. The lighting was intimate, the angle artfully chosen. Eleanor's eyes were glued to the screen, to the cooing text and the incriminating photo. All the righteous fury she had stormed in with evaporated in an instant, leaving a hollow void. Her face went ashen, her lips trembled, and her body swayed so violently she had to grab the back of the sofa to keep from collapsing. Julian, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Last night I lost my head for a moment. He was crying, saying he couldn't move. I was scared something would happen. I don't even know why I'd do it. I love you, I know I love you, but when he asked for something, I can't say no." She was sobbing. And for a moment, her confession sounded genuine. I understood her dilemma. She probably did love me in her own way. That the book's programming was too strong even with William now a disfigured wreck. She was still pathologically incapable of refusing him. I looked down at the face I once adored, now a mess of tears and snot. I slowly bent down and, one finger at a time, pried her desperate hands from my pant leg. The motion was cold, clinical. Then I straightened up, mopped to the coffee table, and pulled open a drawer. Inside was the divorce agreement, waiting patiently along with the pen sign it. I tossed them onto the rug in front of her. My voice was flat. "Eleanor, this is the last chance I'm giving you. Sign it. Then for now, it won't be filed. We will remain husband and wife." I paused, looking down at her frozen, terrified face. "But remember this? This is your last get-out-of-jail-free card if you ever lie to me for him again. If you even see him one more time behind my back." I leaned down, bringing my face close to hers, so close I could see the terror in her ear-soaked eyes. My voice dropped to a low, dangerous whisper. "This agreement becomes effective immediately, and you walk away with nothing. Everything from the Vance family, all our shared assets, every last thing, will have nothing to do with you." I wasn't being greedy. I was just protecting what was mine, and what we had accumulated together. While she ran her family's company, the majority of the shares weren't in her name. My cold stare terrified her into silence. The immense fear eclipsed her grief and her pleas. She knew I wasn't bluffing. The gentle, doting Julian she once knew was gone, replaced by this ruthless, cold-eyed man who meant every word he said. With trembling hands, she picked up the pen and signed her name on the agreement. Her signature was a jagged, desperate scrawl, being pressed deep into the paper. I signed it. "Julian, I promise I'll never do it again." Never again. And in that moment, she meant it. He resolved to cut William out of her life completely. But She had made that resolution many times before. I knew that, unlike me, she was trapped by the story's destiny. The only way for her to be free was for William to die. I bent down emotionals as lie, took the signed document from her, checked the signature, then turned and walked upstairs without another word. After signing her probation papers, Eleanor was on her best behavior for a while. It was a predictable pattern. Every time I disciplined her, she'd be good for a short period. She went back to cooking my meals, making soups, and wandering around in lingerie, trying to use her body and her meekness to rekindle something between us. It was a wasted effort. I had no interest in making love to a hollow shell whose heart was somewhere else. After a few half-hearted encounters, I couldn't even be bothered to keep up the pretense, and just as I predicted, her good behavior didn't last. The dog returns to its vomit, and Eleanor returns to her overflowing well of pathological pity for William. Tonight she came home with red-rimmed eyes, clutching a piece of paper in her hand as if the world were ending. Julian. She buried her face in my chest, her voice thick with emotion. What is it? She handed me the paper. William, he has bone cancer. The doctor says he only has a few days left. I took the so-called diagnostic report. This one was well made. He'd learned his lesson and gone to a different hospital for his forgery. Oh. I raised an eyebrow, my tone neutral. And what do you want from me? My cold reaction made her anxious. But Julian, the doctor said it's already spread. It's incurable. His final wish is to see the northern light. She said it's been his lifelong dream. As she spoke, fresh airs welled up, fueled by a kind of self-congratulatory martyrdom. He is so pitiful, all alone, no family. First he was disfigured, and now he's lost a leg, and he cut off her attempt at emotional blackmail. My expression hardening. You want to go with him? My stare made her flinch. Her eyes darted away, and her voice stopped. I just want to help him fulfill this one last wish, just to see him off on his final journey. Please, I promise. Just this once after we see the lights. After he's gone, I'll cut off all contact for good. I swear from now on, my heart will only be with you, with our family. She held up her hand as if taking an oath, as if she were about to embark on a sacred mission. They watched her performance, feeling nothing but a detached amusement. Sent him off on his final journey? Fine, I'll help you. I'll make sure it's a very final journey. Is that so? I pulled my lips into a humorless smile. How long will you need? Maybe 2 weeks, 20 days at the most. I'll be back before you know it, I promise. She said quickly, sensing I might be giving in. Fine. I nodded. Go. Eleanor, feeling as though she'd been granted a royal pardon, didn't even register the look on my face. The next day she packed her bags, picked up William, and flew to Scandinavia the moment her plane was in the air. I was on the phone with my lawyer. You can proceed. I want it done as quickly as possible. All I had to do now was wait. When the final divorce decree came through, I took a few of my most trusted men and quietly flew to the same country, a country known not only for its beautiful orris, but also for having one of the world's most sophisticated legal frameworks for medically assisted dying. I was kept appraised of Eleanor and William's every move. I arranged for a plausible emergency to draw Eleanor away for a few hours in her absence. My people appeared before William. They were impeccably dressed, their manner professional yet detached, radiating an air of compassionate authority. They introduced themselves as specialists from the International Dignity Foundation. Mr. Hayes, the man in the lead, said, offering a business card. We've received the application for assisted dying that you submitted through our special channels. We also have your detailed medical reports confirming terminal metastatic cystosmara. After a thorough review by our independent medical board and confirmation of the multiple consent forms and cooling off period acknowledgments you signed, your request has been granted final approval. William was stunned. Of course he was stunned. He didn't have terminal cancer. He had never submitted an application for euthanasia. He instinctively tried to deny it. No, I didn't. Who are you, Mr. Hayes? The man calmly cut him off and produced a tablet. On the screen was the flawlessly forged medical history. Below it were several voluntary consent forms and confirmation documents, all bearing a signature that was a perfect replica of his own given your current physical state. The irreversible and extreme pain, your complete lack of mobility, and the immense mental and physical suffering caused by your diagnosed terminal illness, we completely understand and respect your choice to end your life with dignity. It is entirely within your legal rights. Here his words carried an immense psychological weight, an irrefutable professional finality. William stared at the documents on the tablet, and a horrifying realization dawned on him. This was Julian. Julian had used his own forged medical report to dig his grave. He wanted to scream, to run, but his amputated body made it impossible to even stand. No, I don't need this. I'm not sick. It's all fake. Let me go. Eleanor, save me. He shrieked in terror, but it was useless. Mr. Hayes, we understand you're experiencing some emotional distress. This is quite normal. Another man dressed as a doctor said in a soothing but firm tone, we have seen your suffering. Please believe us. This is the most dignified and painless way. Once you've signed the final confirmation, we will administer a gentle sedative. You will simply fall into a peaceful sleep with no pain whatsoever. He gestured. And a woman dressed as a nurse stepped forward, holding a tray with a syringe and a small vial of clear liquid. No, get away from me. I'm not signing. Help. William flailed wildly with his arms, trying to knock the tray away. The patient is overly agitated. He may harm himself and compromise the dignity of the procedure. The lead man ordered calmly, please help Mr. Hayes to compose himself and complete the final signature process. To tall, well-built orderlies immediately moved in, pinning William's struggling body and arms to the bed. The screams and curses were muffled, reduced to desperate, hopeless whimpers. The doctor picked up the syringe and expertly drew the liquid from the vial. As the shot needle approached his arm, William's pupils dilated in absolute terror. He finally understood the depths of Julian's cruelty. Julian didn't just want him ruined and crippled. He wanted him to voluntarily die, stripping him of even the chance to fight back or tell his side of the story. When Eleanor, having dealt with the manufactured emergency, finally rushed back, William was already gone. In his place on the table in the middle of the room sat a single, plain wooden box containing his ashes. Next to it was the euthanasia agreement bearing William's forged signature, a brand new divorce decree with her name on it, and a tablet, unlocked and playing a looping video of every lie. Every manipulative text, every piece of evidence of William's deception. After I returned to New York, my world was quiet. The Vance Corporation was firmly under my control, running smoothly. The house that had once been filled with Eleanor's presence was completely empty, professionally sanitized, and redecorated until not a single trace of her remained. Eleanor came back with William's urn and her copy of the divorce decree. She was penniless. The Miller family, viewing her as a disgrace. To cast her out, her reputation was in ruins, and she became a cautionary tale, a joke whispered at cocktail parties and charity galas. She became obsessed, trying every possible way to contact me. She used burner phones to call, and if I ever accidentally picked up, I was met with hysterical sobs and desperate confessions of love and regret, having lost everything. She couldn't even get within 100 feet of me. My future, on the other hand, had never looked brighter.